it is now time for us to talk about our main event of the evening. The women's featherweight title is getting a rare outing. Amanda Nunes is taking on Felicia Spencer for the belt. And I think the first place we need to start is whether or not this fight is worthy of headlining a pay-per-view, because we did discuss earlier on in the show that the UFC might have some contractual reasons for why they're putting on events. But I think when you look at a lot of the sort of enthusiasm for the show online, they're not really as excited for this one as they would be, obviously, for a Tony versus Justin Gaethje, or even an Adesanya versus Romero. I think fan interest for this one is purely for the hardcores, because you've sort of got this perfect storm, I feel, of you've got a championship belt that most people see as a little bit of a joke. I mean, the women's featherweight division is 2 women. You've got a challenger who's pretty much unknown, and a champion who, for all of her wins, for all of her achievements, has never really appealed to the casual fans.
Yeah, it's funny, really. They built this whole division for one person, and now she's gone. So now it's just there, really. Except for, they got it from Megan Anderson and Spencer, and that's really it.
And I'm actually going to bring that up a little bit later on in the show. I do question the women's featherweight's future depending on this fight result. If you were in Dana White's shoes, would you have gone ahead with this as a pay-per-view main event?
Well, yeah, because you're my friend. Of course, I set this up.
So we're going to be talking about, obviously, the 2 girls in detail. We'll start off with the champion, Amanda Nunes. We've got a 19-4 record. Obviously, it's her first fight since her victory over Jermaine Durandamy at UFC 245. I've been interested with a lot of the sort of promotion about Nunes going into this fight, because I wouldn't necessarily say her stock's lower after the Jermaine fight, but I don't think her fan base is as vocal as they were before that match. I think when you had people like Joe Rogan saying, "Oh, there's no argument, she's the greatest female fighter of all time, nobody can beat her," and then in the Jermaine fight, where she did show a lot of vulnerability, she did get rocked, she nearly got submitted, I think a lot of people in the media just sort of said, we need to pump the brakes a bit. We were just starting to get a bit too carried away, and it nearly backfired on us.
Yeah, like I remember she was getting, I don't want to say pieced apart, but some of the striking, I could see she was getting frustrated with Jermaine's striking in her last fight. So I'm surprised people weren't really talking about it, really, that Jermaine was kind of putting it together on the feet, but just takedown defense and her wrestling just wasn't there at all for that type of championship. So yeah, this could be a nightmare matchup.
I think it was very telling I think it was a good indication of Jermaine's skill set that she forced Nunes to grapple.
Yeah, that was when who was that? Clarissa Shields. She showed up. There was like a massive hype around. I don't want to say massive, but there was definitely talks going on between Nunes and Shields. Like, why else would she show up for that? Like, no other really female boxer would show up for that other than maybe Halle Berry. But that's not really a female boxer. But yeah, so there was definitely some hype around that fight. But then after that fight, it just sort of just died. Like, nobody really wanted to see that, because after that fight, Nunes said, "Oh, if she wants to fight, I'll immediately take it to the ground. I'm not going to a boxing match. She can come to me." So yeah.
And I think the other thing that hasn't helped either is the women so far in 2020 have been making a lot of big statements. I mean, we've had Joanna versus Weili, Shevchenko had a dominant defense, Chris got the 4th belt in Bellator, and that sort of means that Nunes has maybe sort of been lost in the shovel. Now, if she gets the win, which I think a lot of people expected to, that's all going to change. But I think there's sort of bigger fish which are drowning her out, as it were.
Like, I feel like all the attention sort of now is, I don't want to say it's completely on Weili, but I feel like a lot of it is on Shevchenko, considering what happened, considering like where they are now since the last time they fought. Like in their last fight, I feel like Shevchenko probably has a bit more stock than Nunes. Would you agree?
I think Shevchenko's always going to be hindered by having a weaker division.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You could say that.
I mean, I don't really put as much weight into it as what other people do, but it doesn't look as good to the everyday fan when you've got Shevchenko beating, say, a Jessica Rai or a Liz Carmouche over, say, Jermaine Durandamy and Holly Holm, who are bigger names.
That's true, but when you look at the performances that she's putting in, they've all been incredible. They've definitely been casual friendly. Definitely that Jessica I knockout, for sure, casual friendly right there. So, yeah, definitely think she's a bit more friendly towards her fans. I feel like she has a bit more outreach in terms of that, but I do see what you mean about the division. Definitely.
We'll talk about the champion, and obviously the first thing that stands out when it comes to Nunes is some of the most ridiculous power I have ever seen from a female fighter. I mean, we always talk about these sort of like mythical round one fighters, and she's probably up there.
Yeah, first round Nunes. Best way I could describe her is sort of go and watch the Cyborg fight. It looks very similar to Liddell, just with a lot more head movement, but the striking and the way that she throws her hands, very similar to sort of female Liddell a little bit.
Well, Chuck was a fantastic counter striker as well, which I think Nunes is a bit more front foot than Chuck was.
Okay.
But that's just personally my opinion, and I think that's the great thing about mixed martial arts, that a lot of people do have different opinions. I think we do talk about the power, and but I wouldn't say she's just an outright wild overhand type of fighter. I think she has deceptively long jab. I think her leg kicks, she has very powerful leg kicks as well. And we saw that against Raquel Pennington, and you could argue that what led to Chris's downfall was she buckled Chris with the kick. And Chris, dare I say, has pulled a bit of a Cody Garbrandt and just thought, I need to get this done. I need to get her out of here as quickly as I could. But with that power comes some concerns when it comes to cardio, and this has always been the big issue when it comes to Nunes, which is, yes, she is fantastic in that first round, but what happens if you get her out of there? And we saw that against Jermaine Durandamy. Jermaine managed to survive that first round, and then from rounds 2 to 5, it was a completely different fight.
Yeah, like you look at the Pennington fight, that went to the 5th round, but Pennington was sort of like a punching bag near the end of that.
Rocky was on one leg for most of that fight.
Yeah, like she wasn't really putting up really much of a fight for that. So, but you're right. If you get somebody like a Jermaine with proper all-around skill set, sort of, don't want to say a Kamaru Usman, but like somebody with that all-around skill set that can get that takedown and can stuff those takedowns and can control on the ground with the clinch and all that, it could be a problem.
I've always been curious to see how Irene Aldana could do, because I think Irene Aldana knows how to use that reach. If she has the durability to get through round 1, I think that could be an interesting fight. And I think another thing which is sort of a concern when it comes to Nunes, and I always do bring this up as well, because I think there are a lot of people who are sort of painting this idea of Nunes being invincible, which I don't think any fighter is. I think every fighter has weaknesses. Is how is she going to handle 145? Because we talk about cardio, but surely adding 10 extra pounds of muscle to somebody who maybe doesn't have the best gas tank is a bit risky in my opinion. I mean, you look at her in the Cyborg fight, you look at her arms and her shoulders, she looked absolutely massive. She looked like Latifi, just carrying so much muscle. And you do wonder if she doesn't get this done in the first round, what sort of effect's that going to have?
Yeah, we could see her maybe fade a little bit. We'll have to see. She does have those problems.
And especially if she's forced to wrestle. Because you watch her in that Jermaine fight, you look at her at the end of that 5th round, she looked knackered.
Yeah, and Jermaine wasn't really putting up much of a fight in the ground game, like at all. And Felicia definitely will. It's not like she's going to be a slouch down there. Not at all.
Nunes can't afford to be complacent in this fight, because if she does, that could be... Well, we saw that with Jermaine with the up kicks. She got a little bit careless with the grappling side of things, and it very nearly cost her.
Do you think that she's going to force stand-ups and force striking? Do you think she's going to avoid the ground as much as possible?
Yes.
Like we're going to see sort of a Woodley-Maya approach?
Yes, we're going to see a reverse of what she did against Jermaine.
Okay.
Her aim with the Jermaine fight was to get to the ground at all costs. The aim for this one is to stay off the ground.
Okay. We'll have to see.
We will do. And I just want to use this opportunity as well to sort of clear up some sort of issues I've had from people. Because I've had a lot of feedback over some of the criticisms I've had of Nunes. And I admit I'm not necessarily her biggest fan. But I think maybe people... But if you notice, my issues with Nunes are never to do with her as a person or her as a fighter. They're always to do with the business side of the sport, because that's my background. That's what I studied at university, so I'm maybe going to focus on that a bit more than what other people do. The issue for me is, people forget how big the women's bantamweight division was, say 4 or 5 years ago. I think the fact that you had 1 million buys to watch women headlining a pay-per-view in front of 60,000 people in Australia. I think that's amazing. And yet, Nunes becomes champion, and that division loses, 90% of its fan base in less than 2 years.
Yeah, it's quite strange. Like, you have the biggest, not the biggest upset, but the biggest upset to a return, I guess. And then it just fizzled out, really. That's when, after, that was like 207. After that, up until like 214, that was a horrible time period for the UFC. Like, that's a really rough time period. There was like nothing really happening in that time period. That's the next one after that was 208. Great card.
That was a rough card. Honestly, the best thing about that card was Anderson Silva's never-ending winner speech.
Yeah. Man, that was so funny.
My point is, though, is when you look at it from a business perspective, if you've got... I mean, you can be the best champion in the world, but if the average Joe on the street isn't wanting to watch you fight, it doesn't do the UFC any good, it doesn't do the champion any good, and I don't think it helps the division either, because if they're not invested in the champion, they're not going to be invested in the person the champion could be facing next. And I had the same concerns with Aldo and Mighty Mouse when they were champions. And I think those are the two of the best to ever do it. But it's a concern. And I think there was a lot of people from the Jermaine preview who maybe interpreted some of the things in the wrong way. So I just wanted to put a line in the sand over that. And obviously we can move on and continue talking about this fight. Because if you look at the 4 people who've beaten Nunes in her career, Ana India Maria, Sarah D'Alelio, Alexis Davis and Kat Zingano, 4 very similar type of fighters. Durable grapplers who took the fight to the ground, survived round 1 and took control once the cardio issues started. On paper, Felicia Spencer has those qualities.
It seems like an upgraded version of all those fighters. Definitely better than D'Alelio and Davis. But Zingano, it's pretty sad to see what happened to her when she came back. She never really gained that steam, and I think isn't she a free agent now? Is she even
she's with Bellator.
Oh shit! Okay,
I
didn't even know that.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do Cyborg versus Zingano.
Yeah, honestly,
because Corker would use that with a lot of leverage.
Yeah,
I beat the girl who beat your girl. What's interesting with Felicia as well is we've got an 8-1 record here. Obviously, former Invicta champion, 2 wins in the UFC, both by first round submission. Yet the fight that a lot of people are using as leverage to say Felicia Spencer has a chance is the fight she lost, which was the Chris Cyborg fight, and a lot of that stems from how much damage she took in that fight and still kept coming forward.
Yeah, really. Like, that fight, Cyborg, like, really just couldn't put her away in that fight. Like, Spencer just walked forward and just took all of it, really. That's what's going to be a telling point for this fight, really. She's got a great chin.
And I think there was only ever one time in that fight where I felt she was genuinely hurt. That was like near the third round, I think. Cyborg caught her with a knee coming up, and Felicia did go on the back foot a bit. But apart from that, I don't think it seemed to faze her. And I think as well, a good thing from Felicia's perspective as well, even though she maybe does carry a bit more timber than what a normal person would, she's got good cardio. We saw that in Invicta when she fought Pam Sorensen. That fight went into the 4th and 5th rounds before she got the sub. So she can make a 25-minute distance.
Definitely. She's got great cardio.
Yeah, and she also has great submission skills as well.
That Megan Anderson fight, great fight.
I think a lot of people overlooked Felicia for that fight, and I was saying to her, we don't know how good Megan is on the ground. I think if Felicia Spencer is able to get this fight to the ground, she has a very good chance of winning this one. Because I think Megan's got fantastic striking, and I think she started to improve her takedown defense, especially based on what we saw in her last 2 fights. But she looked very amateur in that one, and I think it's a credit to Felicia that she was able to do that. But there's a big difference between Megan Anderson's takedown defense and Nunes's. And my worry from Felicia's perspective is she almost sort of falls into the women's MMA trap. She's not a very technical takedown artist. Because what Kat Zingano did so well against Nunes, if you watch that fight, she was working the body in the clinch, she was throwing knees and utilising these really technical judo trips and judo throws. Felicia doesn't really have that. She sort of just pushes people against the fence and just tries to brute them down. And I don't really feel you can do that at this sort of level.
Yeah, like you look at Anderson compared to Nunes. Like Anderson, tall, lanky fighter, like not really built the same at all compared to Nunes. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a different fight.
That being said, though, we have seen Nunes taken down even in the second stage of her career. Shevchenko, who's tiny at 135, she got her down. And even Raquel Pennington, who was on one leg, got her down in the second round.
Yeah.
It is doable, but it's going to be very hard for Felicia. Especially when I saw the fight against Zara Fairn. That was uploaded onto YouTube a couple of days ago. Some of her takedown entries just seemed a little bit amateur for me. And you could even argue that Zara Fairn was winning the stand-up. And I don't think Zara is anywhere near UFC level.
Yeah.
And yet she was causing Felicia problems on the feet.
Yeah, and it is at the apex, so that is a smaller octagon, so it could favor her a little bit. Like Nunes won't be able to run nearly as much, so we'll have to see.
But it could also give Nunes the opportunity to swarm her, which we know that she can do.
Yeah.
I hope that Felicia has made these improvements in her striking and especially in her takedowns. My one fear I have is she'll have seen all the praise she got for the Cyborg fight and just think, I can be a Homer Simpson. I can just take all these shots and eventually she's going to get tired.
Yeah, that could definitely not be good for Nunes or for Spencer, because Nunes is striking, like, it can be very accurate, like right on the button and stuff. So it could definitely be one of those flash knockouts if you're not careful.
And that's the... I don't see Nunes one-shotting her.
Okay.
But I think
she does have that power though. Like, it's not really the same as... Like, it's not the same as Cyborg. Like, Cyborg is more of like a swarming, like she'll beat you down type of knockout. Like, it's not really a one-punch knockout type of style, but Nunes is a bit more focused on that. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes. Especially when, with Felicia, she sometimes leads with the elbows as well, which I think's so risky. I don't like seeing that at top-level MMA, because I think it just opens yourself up to so many problems. We do joke about the Homer Simpson strategy, but I dare say it, I think that's Felicia's best way to win this fight.
Yeah, if it works out, I could definitely see it panning out for her.
I'd be interested to see what happens to the women's featherweight division, I should say, if Felicia was to get this done, because the way the featherweight division is right now is it's essentially a vanity belt for Nunes. It's just something for her to carry around and for the UFC to say, look how great she is. But the division itself just goes into hibernation until they decide, say 2 or 3 years down the line, Megan Anderson's ready for the fight. We don't know if Megan ever will be, to be honest. If Felicia was to win that fight, her sole focus is going to be on defending that belt. So the UFC are going to have themselves a choice. They're either going to have to sign girls for the division or scrap the whole thing. Scrap the whole thing and try and convince Felicia to move down to 135.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking if Nunes wins by like quick knockout, I'm thinking they immediately scrap it. I think it's going to be like dead overnight. We'll never hear about it again.
It was a mistake from the UFC to put the division together.
Yeah, really. It was put together so quickly. It was quite strange. Like, I've never seen that before. Like, they put a division together so quickly after Cyborg was so vocal about it when she joined the UFC. It's like they did it specifically for her. It was really strange. Like, I've never seen the UFC bend like that.
But I didn't think it was 100% needed either. I mean, you could very easily have done sort of feature bouts against Chris time and again.
Okay.
You didn't need to give her a belt. But that's just what I personally think. In terms of this fight, we're going to have ourselves a prediction. Personally, I think it would be such a good feel-good story if Felicia won this fight. To be this sort of 6-1 underdog who is sort of a bit of an every girl. She comes across really nice as well, seems very pleasant when you speak to her on social media. So my heart would like Felicia to win this fight from that perspective. My gut in my head says Nunes gets it done in the first 2 rounds.
Okay. I'm gonna go with the upset. I'm gonna say Spencer by decision, locking it in.
What I hope to see, and I say this from a fight perspective, I hope it goes past 2 rounds. Because if it does, we could have ourselves a very different fight. And I would be interested to see if Nunes' cardio holds up at 145, whether Felicia does start finding some success with the grappling. The longer this fight goes, the more chance Felicia Spencer wins. It's just I don't see her getting into the later rounds.